My God. Well, I can't even see myself. Hold on. Gallery view. I guess we should start letting them in. What do you think?
I think we could wait 30 seconds.
I'm nervous. I'll pull up the site.
And when you're done with your intros, I'm gonna have to share my screen to show this
You
thing.
got the power. You have the power because you are the co-host.
Co-host. All right. Well,
What?
go ahead and do your thing if you want.
What thing?
The letting.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second, homeo. Letting them in. See waiting room. Vimala. Hi, Jean.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. Aya Vimala. So nice to see you.
Hi.
That's a lovely photo you have there.
Yeah, it turned out well. I was just sitting in my little living room.
It's nice.
I guess I could put my real self.
Even more lovely.
Well, that's debatable, but it's real.
That's the real. We like that. Real is in now. It's hot. It's what's in.
It's the true.
Mm-hmm. It
Hi,
is.
everybody.
Hi, Sue-Ann. How are you?
Okay, how's everyone?
We're good.
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 Really good.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Bante Mangala. You have no idea. I've missed you. Is that proper for me to say?
Of course it is.
Okay, good. You have been missed.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. I've just been busy and running around and all that fun stuff.
Oh, I know how that is indeed. Well, it's great to have you with us this evening.
Well, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
Okay, and we're just going to give it another 30, 45 seconds or so, waiting for people to come in. Okay, everyone. Let's hit it. I want to welcome you all to our regular Sutta and the City discussion. We meet here every Sunday, every Thursday from 7 to 7:45 p.m. We're happy to see some newcomers amongst us that we hope that you find tonight's discussion enriching. So we're going to discuss a single wonderful night. More in depth. We have discussed this sutta prior to this, and but now we're getting the version from Mahakachana, sorry. You know, as you may remember from our previous sutta where we've had Mahakachana, he will explain it all to us. He will make sense of everything, and that's a good thing. Because sometimes the Buddha can be hard to understand for us regular folk. So I think Stephen is going to carry a lot of this evening. He's done a great deal of preparation. for which I'm grateful. I've been doing a lot of mentoring with Climate Reality Project, and it's overtaken my world for the last week. So, Stephen, what do you have on tap for us tonight?
Well, that's a good question. It's certainly not an easy sutta to grapple with, yet it seems like a very important sutta. And I think we could tell that because, in fact, there are four suttas in a row which basically deal with this poem, this piece of verse which the Buddha recitals. And we have his version first, and then we have three subsequent takes, which certainly leads me to believe that it was not so easy to understand. And which is kind of reassuring because since I don't really understand it, I feel like I'm in rather good company. So one of the things I thought I would look at was a very interesting, I'm going to share my screen here, a very interesting sort of monograph, we might say, by a very great monk who recently died named Bhikkhu Nyanananda, who was a Sri Lankan monk. I think he spent his entire life in Sri Lanka in rather austere circumstances in a cave. For the most part, I heard a wonderful story from a friend who went to visit him. And this was at the end of the Venerable's life. And he lived extremely simply, and he was getting rather elderly. And they said, Bhante, perhaps you would like some electricity. You know, here that you're in your 80s and you're living in a cave, you think maybe electricity might be a good idea? And he said, oh no. More light outside, less light inside. And so he was a pretty serious man, we might say. And I have to also say that to read his writing, one has to sort of be stalwart and tough because he's rather uncompromising with his Pali. But I just wanted to point out a few things in this essay because I think they're very interesting and can help us kind of start to grapple with this set of suttas. And the first thing that presents a problem is that the name itself is unclear, what it actually means. And he starts off his essay by referring to notes written by the great I.B. Horner, the great English translator, Iselin Blue Horner, who was for a very long time the president of the Pali Text Society and a very formidable translator of Pali. And her translation of the Majjhima Nikaya was the one in English for many years until Venerable Nyanamoli did his, which actually, in fact, remained in manuscript when he died. And only many years later did Venerable Bodhi then come upon it and edit it and publish it. And so that's a sort of a joint publication, what we have today. But I wanted to point out, this is a note of hers. And just quickly, she mentions how, I'm going to highlight it for you. I thought it best to translate only the first part of the baffling compound. So this sutta is called the Bud Ekarata Sutta. But, you know, she freely admits that she's baffled. She just doesn't even know what this name means. And so if we're not sure what it means, we shouldn't feel so bad because this is one of the great translators of the 20th century saying she was baffled. But she says this, which is interesting. For the sage who comes to be at peace has prospered not by following after the past, by not desiring the future to be such or so, and by cultivating a right attitude to present things. His position is not due to luck, a happy chance, or fortune's favors. It is due to his own successful efforts, determined resolution, and shunning of indolence. So I think this begins to point us to perhaps what this sutta is all about. And then he points to Venerable Nyanamoli's notes to it, which were unpublished at his death, because he chose to translate it in a very different way than what we have today, which is a single excellent night. And his choice was, and which actually carried through the first edition of Venerable Bodhi's translation, as those who were in our group last time sort of encountered their other copies, one who has fortunate attachment. And so you might think, how is that even possible to be the same words? It seems like a radically different way. And I'll sort of spare you the gory details of how he came about it. But one of the things I wanted to point out here for us is that this seems to be what Nyanamoli calls a coined word. And I think one of the fascinating things about the Buddha and about the Pali language is that the Buddha took words and put them together in completely new ways. In other words, he essentially invented words to express new ideas because he was, of course, we know, espousing a very new doctrine, a completely new vision of the way things are. And so to do that, he had to, in a very real sense, invent new words to tell us about it and to help us understand what he was trying to explain to us. And so here, Venerable Nyanamoli says, it might be supposed that the expression Baddheka was a popular phrase taken over by the Buddha and given a special sense by him, as it was not infrequently done, but there seems no reason to do so, and there is no evidence for this in this case. It is more likely to be a term coined by the Buddha himself to describe a certain aspect of the development. And then he points to a term that we've actually had in this group when we studied the simile of the snake. That's Ukita Palika, one who has lifted the bar, which is certainly a turn of phrase which kind of made me kind of say, what does that even mean? And another one, which is Ditthipata, which is one who has attained vision. And so I just wanted to point out this kind of very interesting aspect of Pali Buddhism, where we're finding the Buddha making up words, coining new words to express this kind of novel, visionary take on the way things are. So that's very interesting, I think. And then Venerable Nyanananda kind of weighs in, of course, the whole point of this essay, which he calls a possible solution. And he points to a very interesting sutta, which we may take in this group, which is in the Samyutta Nikaya, which is called the Teranamo Sutta, which means something like the one named the elder, or he calls it the elder named. And it's all about a man who lives alone. And he's not a Buddhist, of course. He's just a recluse that lives alone. And one day, the story goes, he encounters the Buddha. And he says this, he says, "Here, Lord, alone I enter the village for alms. Alone I return, alone I sit in seclusion, and alone I pace up and down. It is thus, Lord, that I am a lone dweller and an exponent of lone dwelling." And so here's the interesting part. This is now the Venerable's commentary. The Buddha's remarks in this instant were neither those of condemnation nor of unqualified praise. He says, "There is, Tara, this type of lone dwelling. I do not deny it. But, Tara, I shall tell you the manner in which lone dwelling is fulfilled in all its details. Listen attentively to it." And so here, once again, we see the Buddha basically redefining a term. He says, and we saw this recently in our group when we talked about what a Brahmin is. And we saw the Buddha basically saying, no, a Buddha is not a person who has been born into a certain caste. I'm just completely reassigning the meaning of that word, and it means this. And so once again here is the Buddha saying, well, no, you're saying you're living in seclusion, but I'm not really buying that. Let me explain to you what I think it means when one says one lives in seclusion or in one's solitude. And the answer that the Buddha gives in that sutta, which I think is very relevant to our current text, is, "Herein, elder, whatever is past, that is abandoned. Whatever is yet to come, i.e. the future, that is relinquished. And the desire and lust for the present modes of personality is well under control. It is thus, Elder, that the ideal of lone dwelling becomes fulfilled in all its details. So, by the way, I just love this kind of rather technical word here, which Venerable Nyanananda renders as the present modes of personality, attabhava patilabesu. So notice how carefully the Buddha is here in talking about what there is in fact present. So, of course, just like in our sutta in our last session, he talks about letting go of the past, not dwelling in the past, letting go of the future, not dwelling in the future, being in the present. And of course, the question arises, well, what in fact is there in the present? And what should be done? And here we have this very carefully worded phrase and very well translated. The desire and lust for the present modes of personality is well under control. And so here I think we have a hint too of the question that was raised very justifiably in our last session, which certainly didn't become well answered, which is, well, how do we in fact dwell in the present moment? What exactly should we be doing? What does that mean to be in the present moment? Because I think we all know that we spend the vast majority of our time, so to speak, not in the present, that we spend almost all of it in either the past or the future. And I think we all know that there is probably, we might say, an aversion to the present moment. It just doesn't seem interesting in so many ways. It just doesn't seem enticing. It doesn't seem worth our time. We seem to rather spend it thinking about other stuff. Life passes us by, and we don't even know what happened. And so here we get a hint of what's happening in the present and what perhaps we should be doing. And I'm not going to tell you, in fact, what this essay goes on to explain in detail, because I want to entice you to look at it as well. But I just want to share this one last verse, which again is relevant. Let one not trace back the past or yearn for the future yet to come. That which is past is left behind. The yet to come is unattained, and that which is present he discerns with insight as and when it comes. And so maybe we'll leave this essay here and then now turn to our suttas, and I'll sort of relinquish my screen. And I thought it might be nice, today we're going to deal with 133, which is Mahakachana's sort of second explanation of the verses. And I thought we might start with Regina reciting those striking and beautiful verses for us again in English, because they're not actually fully stated in 133. So, Regina?
Okay. Just I will share my screen so that y'all can follow along.
Mm-hmm.
A single excellent night.
That's certainly one way of translating it.
Yes.
A single excellent night. So what does it really mean that it's a single excellent night? And why single? It's a kind of a puzzle, isn't it?
Let not a person revive the past or on the future build his hopes. For the past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let them see each presently arisen state. Let them know that and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. Today, the effort must be made. Tomorrow, death may come. Who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, by day, by night, it is he the peaceful sage has said, who has had a single excellent night.
Great. So beautiful. And it's so nice to also keep in mind that the Pali Canon is just so full of poetry. It is not just sort of dry lists of data. It is extremely expressive and beautiful. And so in this sutta, well, maybe we can keep on that sutta for a minute. The Buddha then, of course, exhorts his monks to not dwell in the past, and then to not dwell in the future, but to dwell in the present moment. And his sort of tactic, or what he tells his followers that they should be doing, or what they should be looking at in the present moment, is expressed in terms of the aggregates. So, Regina, would you mind calling up that for us?
Yes.
For 131.
And 131.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to look at that one more time
Sure.
quickly.
Okay.
And so what he's pointing to, which I always find a little bit hard to wrap my mind around, is this relationship between form and self. And he sort of explains 4 different modes of the relationship that form and self could possibly be in, and then rejects all 4. And he just says, this is just a wrong view. This is what he calls Sakkaya Ditthi. And so Sakkaya Ditthi is the view of a permanent, unchanging self. So Regina, if we can go to number 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to point out, so this is the Buddha himself talking about how, and we read this in our last session together, how one does it, so to speak. So we can see here again on our screen in number 8, how bhikkhus is one vanquished in regard to presently arisen states. In other words, how does one mess it up? How does one fail? How does one go wrong? And he gives this, what Regina, I think, pointed out very well, to be this kind of shake-up, this exhortation, which makes us feel rather unsatisfactory. An untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma. And here is how they go wrong. These 4 things. They regards material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or as self in material form. And of course, this can be said to be the case for the other 4 aggregates. So of course, you know that we have 5 aggregates according to the Buddha, and we have these 4 ways of thinking of them wrongly. And so these are sort of a classic set of 20 wrong views that we can mess up by thinking, and I think we probably all do think this. It should not be thought as sort of a weird philosophical concept that we never even imagined possible. I think some form of this is probably the way we kind of operate, our standard form, our standard mode of being. So in a sense, I would say, if we boil down these 4 views, what they might express was either that the form is just the self, they're one and the same, or the self exists in some relation to the form. But I think we might say that the problem with this whole way of thinking about things is that it's regarding the self as this solid thing, which in ancient India was called the Atman, which in Pali is called the Atta. And so it's because of not understanding impermanence and perhaps non-self that we take the self to be this solid, unchanging thing. And then we try to figure out that relationship to form. But the Buddha just rejects the entire argument. And this is sort of his Copernican revolution in a sense. He's saying you've just started on the wrong foot from the beginning, because there is no self to discover in the first place. And so none of these possibilities can possibly be true. Your whole premise is flawed. It's faulty. It's just incorrect. It's wrong view. But perhaps this mode of thinking doesn't fully answer our question, which we started this evening with, which is how do we actually practice this? What are we supposed to be doing here in this present moment? What are we exactly looking at? And I think it's maybe time now for us to turn to Mahakachana, because in several instances in the canon, Mahakachana comes to the rescue. And he helps out so many people to understand and further explain what the Buddha taught, because of course we all regard the Buddha as the supreme teacher, but we're just ordinary mortals. And so sometimes we need a help of a friend, a Kalyana Mitta. And so in this sense, our Kalyana Mitta is in fact Mahakachana. And he actually explains this sutta this verse, I should say, in a different way. It's also interesting that the setup, which I don't think we need to read, is interesting because it actually starts with a monk named Samiti who encounters a deva, like a god. And the god, this deva, comes up to Samiti, who doesn't seem particularly amazed that a god has appeared to him, which I think might be interesting in itself. And he says, well, do you know this verse? And he says, no, I don't, I'm afraid. And he says, oh, well, you should. And he says, why? And he says, because it's so important. It's such an important thing. It belongs to the fundaments of the holy life. And so the fundaments of the holy life, I think that is a very strong suggestion to us that this information is a very good thing to know, that this verse is a very important facet of Buddhism, not to mention, as I said a few minutes ago, that there are 4 consecutive suttas that are devoted to it. And so he hears this, and then Mahakachana comes to the rescue. And I thought maybe we can start reading a little bit later, because we have this sort of traditional throat clearing where Mahakachana says, well, you know, if you had just listened to the Buddha, you wouldn't have to ask me this question. What do I know? I'm no Buddha. And then the monks are like, well, come on. He left. You're all we've got. You've got to help us out, man. And then Mahakachana says, well, I guess if you really insist, I will do it for you. You owe me one. And so after all this throat clearing, he finally launches into his explanation of what the verses might mean. And so, Regina, where are we going to start reading?
I thought that 13 would be good because it starts with not reviving the past. We will need several readers. So if y'all can click your blue hands on the participant screen, as always, we'll start with Sue Ann for paragraph 13, and then we'll take it from there.
Regina,
yes?
I'm sorry. I don't have paragraph 13 because I only have the original one.
Right.
So tonight I don't have your other Sutta interpretation.
Yes. You know what? I meant to upload it. Please forgive me, you guys. I've been so
that's
overloaded.
All right.
I've been so busy.
Sure.
Okay.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry.
We'll have Sue Ann for the next time. But we have Gita, and the rest of you who would like to read, please raise your hands as well. So Gita, if you'll start us off on 13.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
No worries.
Okay. So starting at 13, how, friends, does one revive the past? One's consciousness becomes bound up with desire and lust. Their thinking, my I was thus in the past, and forms were thus. Because one's consciousness is bound up with desire and lust, one delights in that. When one delights in that, one revives the past. One's consciousness becomes bound up with desire and lust. Their thinking, my ear was thus in the past, and sounds were thus, my nose and odors, my tongue and flavors, my body and tangibles. My mind was thus in the past, and mind objects were thus. Because of one's consciousness is bound up with desire and lust, one delights in that. When one delights in that, one revives the past. That is how one revives the past.
Great. Thank you so much, Gita.
No problem. Anytime. Thanks for the opportunity. Do you want me to read 14 as well?
We have no volunteers. Oh, Young Kuei just raised her hand. Thank you for volunteering, Gita, but we'll go with Young Kuei and then after that, Leonardo. Young Kuei, if you can take 14, please.
How does one not revive the past? One's consciousness does not become bound up with desire and lust there, thinking, my I was thus in the past and forms were thus. Because one's consciousness is not bound up with desire and lust, one does not delight in that. When one does not delight in that, one does not revive the past. One's consciousness does not become bound up with desire and lust there, thinking, my ear was thus in the past and sounds were thus, my nose and odors, my tongue and flavors, my body and tangibles. My mind was thus in the past and mind objects were thus. Because one's consciousness is not bound up with desire and lust, one does not delight in that. When one does not delight in that, one does not revive the past. That is how one does not revive the past.
Thank you so much, Young Kuei. I just want to give some thoughts in terms of how to see this, not reviving the past. And remember, it's the delight that we feel when we're making contact with these sense objects that stirs up the desire and then that sort of clinging. So for me, for example, when I used to take the subway before there was the pandemic, I've found over the years, it's a funny thing that has happened over the last few decades, that people on the subway seem to be getting younger and younger. It certainly can't be that I'm getting older. And what I started doing with this consciousness that came about was reminiscing about how I used to be and how my form was and how it must be so nice to be so young and in New York City. And I'm not young. And all of these things get stirred up. So yes, delighting in these memories or even delighting in what one sees can stir up these memories that are not always pleasant. They could be bittersweet because I'm not that anymore.
Well, that certainly lends us to our papancha idea that we've been talking about in this group, this kind of obsessive reflection. I also wanted to mention that it's interesting that he's sort of driving us to think about ourselves in terms of this process, that he seems to be driving ourselves to not think of ourselves as this kind of being that's solid, but rather just a process of stuff, things that are arising and things that are passing away. Just a compilation of aggregates, so to speak. That's how he describes the person.
Right. I believe we're on paragraph 15 now. I do just want to bring up one other example because it doesn't have to be about physical form, but when the nose meets smell, I mean, have you ever had an experience where all of a sudden you smelled a specific perfume? It might have brought you back decades to maybe it was a perfume that you thought your mother wore or a favorite aunt, and then that whole world becomes revived again. There's many ways that we do this, and I'm just kind of like wanting to plant a seed for y'all to investigate that. And so Leonardo, paragraph 15.
Okay.
How, friends, does one build up hope upon the future? One sets one's heart on obtaining what has not yet been obtained, thinking, may my I be thus in the future and forms be thus. Because one sets one's heart thus, one delights in that. When one delights in that, one builds up hope upon the future. One sets one's heart on obtaining what has not yet been obtained, thinking, may my ear be thus in the future, and sounds be thus. May my nose and others, and so forth. May my tongue and flavors, and so forth. May my body and tangibles. May my mind be thus in the future, and mine objects be thus. Because one sets one's hearts thus, one delights in that. When one delights in that, one builds up hope upon the future. That is how one builds up hope upon the future.
Thank you so much, Leonardo. And some people may say, what's wrong with having hope in the future? I have goals, I have values, I have things I want to attain. You know, there's things I want to do. I just want you to think back in your life when you may have had a hope for a particular job or a particular love object. That feeling of hope can, yes, indeed, it does take us out of the present moment, but also there's just that slight feeling of desperation, right? I've got to have this thing. If I don't have this thing, then what? And hoping and longing for something, it puts us in this sort of subservient position to that goal that we must have. So think about how that experience is for you, or might be for you, or if that even is for you. And
now we have the crux of it, but we have no hands.
okay, we do have the crux of it. Yes. Do we have someone? Okay, Bante Mangala, yay! He's going to read the crux of it for us. Paragraph 16.
How, friends, does one not build up hope upon the future? One does not set one's heart on obtaining what has not yet be obtained, thinking, may my eye be thus in the future, and form be thus. Because one does not set one's heart thus, one does not delight in that. When one does not delight in that, one does not build up hope upon the future. One does not set one's heart on obtaining what has not been obtained, thinking, may my ear be thus in the future, sounds be thus. May my nose, may my nose and odors, may my tongue and flavors, may my body intangibles, may my mind be thus.
Okay, in the future.
Sorry. May my mind be thus in the future, and mine objects be thus. Because one does not set one's heart thus, one does not delight in that. When one does not delight in that, one does not build up hope upon the future. That is how one does not build up hope upon the future.
Thank you so much. I think that's a good stopping point for now, at least. I would like to hear some of your questions regarding what we've read so far. This is kind of deep and not easy stuff. Show of hands for those of you who may have questions about what we've just covered. Wow, it was easy.
No.
A resounding silence.
Yeah.
Clear as day. I guess, Regina, you and I are the only ones that found this not so clear.
No, that's amazing.
It's very hard. It's so hard. It's hard to ask a question.
Yes.
It goes back to that, when you guys started initially with the other sutta about what happens in that present moment after you don't pine for the future or the past, what is it that we're doing in that present moment? And this seems to talk about what is mindfulness in the present moment? What does it mean to be here? And how does one grapple with the senses and all the stuff's coming in? And it's, they're suggesting not to delight in them, not to perseverate, and not to spin off a movie, a novel about it, or, even a 5-second novel. I don't know. It seems like that's what they're suggesting. And I'm curious a bit more about the whole understanding what is mind, what is it seems the present moment mindfulness.
So I think that's a very good question. So part of what it is that we are looking for is to be aware of, this isn't, we're to be contemplating each presently arisen state, just where it has arisen, by way of the 7 contemplations of insight. So I wish that I could make this bigger, but I can't for some reason right now because of the mode that we're in. But some of the things that we could be thinking of in the moment would be the characteristics, for example, impermanence, non-self, the truth of suffering, disenchantment, cessation, dispassion, relinquishment. These are things that we can be aware of as they arise and pass away. We can also be aware of very simple, crude, not crude in the true sense of the word, but hearing as it arises and passing away, feeling states as they arise and pass away. Stephen, what is your opinion on what we're aware of in the moment, the very few microseconds that it happens for us in the day?
Well, I mean, this seems to be the whole heart of what vipassana means and what maybe sati sampajanya means, mindfulness and clear comprehension, to sort of apprehend mental states and consciousness as it arises, to be able to perceive it as it arises, as it stays, and as it drops. And so it seems like, in an ideal sense, one would be able to see these discrete, constantly arising and passing away mental states, which are born of the aggregates. As we have this over and over again, they're born of the eye, born of the ear. And so this is for us the world in a way. The Buddha has said this, that the world is the 5 aggregates for us. This is what we are working with. And what we're trying to see is how this is not a solid thing, but it's rather this discrete, constant passing away, arising, passing away of this sensory information. And so it's interesting that the Buddha is constantly telling us that to see the truth of the way it is, we have to look within. We don't have to look outward. We have to look inward to see the process of what's happening for us at the very present moment.
And this is like not easy stuff. I know that Linda Rose, you had your hand up, and then Stephanie. Those may be the last 2 questions. We'll see how it goes. Linda Rose, your question, please.
Yeah, I think I know the answer, but just to say, in that last part, reading about not to delight in this or that, that word delight is tricky because, it makes me think, oh, we can't really enjoy whatever is happening. I think it's really about disenchantment that we're talking about here, to not get attached to the joy, so to speak. But I just wanted to name that because I think that a lot of times that's a kind of a misunderstanding of what the Buddha's teachings are, to not have joy, to not enjoy.
Thank you so much for that. I'm really, really glad that you did name that and bring that up. Because absolutely Buddhism, so many people do have that conception, but it is a misconception. So the type of not delighting in, I don't know, I might be revealing too much about myself, but there have been times, I'll use the subway analogy. I'll just use that again, where, I've had a very long subway ride and I'm just like, I don't want to be here. It's hot. People are loud. I don't like what I'm seeing over there. And so I will literally take myself out of place, out of body, and delight in thoughts that aren't even, they just don't exist. But rather than being in the moment, rather than seeing things as they are, there have been times where I prefer to just dream and create pleasant thoughts of situations that have never happened and probably never will. So I think something like that is more key to what he's saying. And of course, we can see how this could be problematic if someone's not aware of of doing it, and they use it as a defense mechanism or a way to truly escape reality, then you have a case of delusion where a person can literally lose touch with reality. I mean, we can see that. Thankfully, that didn't happen to me. I chose to be in not reality. Stephen, anything that you wanted to add to that?
Maybe just briefly, I would say it's a good point about the delight. And I think where delight goes wrong is when it fosters attachment. And so it's not about, oh, that's pleasant and feeling bad, because that feeling bad would, of course, be an aversion, push back, which we don't want either. But to hold to it, to want more of it, to think that it could be permanent, but yet it's not. I think this is when the wrong view arises. Not to just knowing something is pleasant is just simply knowing how something is. And there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, as far as I can see. Where we go wrong is when we delight in it and just want more and can't let it go.
Thank you, Stephen.
Can I say something?
Sure. We have Stephanie and Jean. Did you have
sorry.
That's okay.
No, it was just a quick comment. I was going to say that what you just said, Stephen, harks back to me of what I said a while ago. I forgot what sutta we were on, but I was asking about the fact that I was finding nature in this lockdown and finding myself joyful at the hills and the grass and the flowers and stuff like that. But I didn't bring it home with me and say, God, I hope I get that again tomorrow. So, I asked if it was okay to take joy in that moment. And I think you explained it, that it is all right, that the Buddha doesn't want us to be unhappy, and that it's all right for us as long as we don't have attachment to it and expect it and want more all the time.
Right, because then you move into sort of like an addictive way of being.
Right.
So thank you for that, Sue-Ann, and thank you for bringing that up again, as we do remember early in the pandemic. Yes. Stephanie.
So at the attempt to be brief, what I'm struck by is the 7 contemplations, and and I just want to be corrected if my thinking is off, but it feels like that in any given moment, contemplating these 7 is in some ways protection from falling into that attachment and kind of unconsciousness around that very shaky place from the arising of Vedana and Sanya to just the proliferation. Like, this doesn't feel effortless to me, these 7 contemplations. They feel effortful.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm grappling with these. These are new to me. I'm not familiar with this. So it's interesting to me.
It's certainly a big part of right effort, I would say, right? Right effort. It's a path factor. The monk strives.
Yeah.
He's relentless in his pursuit. We have this kind of language over and over again. It's a very active, striving, diligent, relentless process. Because we're in a sense, I think, fighting against the natural tendency of the mind, which is just to wander away.
Yes.
And we can do that for lifetimes, for aeons.
Get caught up, and just to get caught up. And especially if the conditioning prior to coming to the path is to get caught up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very true. Thank you so much for that. I was having trouble. I wanted to share that with you all. Jean, you had a question? Brevity. What is it? Brevity is the soul of wit.
Yes, I hope it's brief. But I just had I've been reading The Wings of Awakening by Thomas Sorrow Bhikkhu. And he was talking about observing, this observing all this that's coming up, and and how you deal with it, because when you're just watching the mind, and sometimes so much comes up, you know, when you get away from the single focus, and he discusses, you know, how to bear it, that there's so much coming up and so changing, but I haven't gotten that far.
So it you know, for me, it makes it easier to bear it when you know, I hear the dog barking in the park across the street, and oh, okay, suffering is happening. When I hear the dog stop barking, which really takes forever, you know, I can key into impermanence. But it's not like I'm taking these on and making these personal things that I'm suffering through. These are passing phenomena that are happening in our world, and the mind is simply noting them. And to me, having these 7 contemplations of insight is really a good guide in terms of how do I deal with the here and now? How do I deal with what the mind is doing? It really does depersonalize that. It doesn't derealize, it depersonalizes. I hope that helps. We're going to take this, we're going to continue this topic through, we're going to do this for Sunday, because it's there's so much to this topic, and we don't feel as though just a few sessions are enough. So I just saw that Young Kuei had a quick question. I'm sure it's quick.
It will be very quick. Just
okay.
what is the reference for these 7 insights? Because, you know, I seen this separately in separate places, but not all together lumped in one. So just, where is that?
I think it was in 131, wasn't it?
It was in 131?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
it
was I believe it was in the commentary to 131.
Ah.
It was either directly in it or it was part of the commentary.
Okay.
So
yes, you're right. I think it's in the commentary, which would be a footnote. If you don't have the paper copy, we'll have to post that.
Yeah, we can post that.
I'll look it up.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, so once again, you guys, it's been a wonderful evening sharing Dhamma with you. We really appreciate your spending your time with us, and also your patience. This is not easy stuff. Like Stephanie said, this is effortful, but you know, to get the fruits of the path, sometimes, okay, most of the time, it requires us to put effort into it. But the benefits of the path are so manifold, and we feel that it's worth it, and we've seen that in our lives, and we really want that in your lives too. So we look forward to seeing you again this Sunday. If you would like to offer any type of dana, you may do so on our website. But what we really want is to see you all again, so that you may lead happy, healthy, and peaceful lives. And we wish this for all of you. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Stay well, everyone.
Stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye, everyone. Good
Bye,
night.
Sue-Ann. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Leonardo.
Bye.
Bye, Sophia, Vimala, James, Jean, and David. It's so good to see you. Yay. Newcomers. We love our newcomers. We hope you come back. Thank you all very much. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.